Well, folks, welcome back and thanks for joining me. This is part one, officially part one, of my project to restore this 1976 ski Nautique ski boat. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about the stages that I'm going to do it in and what my target dates are and so forth. So here goes. The boat has no history, no maintenance history, no maintenance log, etc. So I really don't know what the status of anything on this boat is in terms of repair, whether it works or not, whether it's running or not, what's been done to it, etc. So in order to assure that I have a safe boat to go out in and come back in without having to rely on Towboat US and the other stuff, going through the whole boat and evaluating every aspect of it, upgrading everything that is old, right? So old hoses, old wiring, old alternators, old electrics, because there's no electronics in the 1976 boat, etc. So the first thing I'm working on are the hoses. I feel that you can't start the boat without knowing that all the hoses are good. You can't really run it unless they're good. They're probably, from a universal point of view, the most difficult thing to upgrade because Lord knows what you have to take apart to pull them out, as I've found. The electrical is pretty much all above board. I mean, there's some under the cockpit here that's a little awkward to get to, but electrical is easy stuff compared to hoses. Old hoses need to be cut out, etc. And you have to make sure that you're matching the temperature for exhaust hoses, the compressibility for water intake hoses, because that water is being sucked into the boat and you don't want the hoses to collapse. Pressure hoses, gas hoses, exhaust hoses, etc. So that's what I'm working on first to get that right. So I'm going to show you what I've done so far in attacking that problem or potential problem, and show you what I found. Here we go. So we're going to start with looking at the motor, because that's where almost all the hoses are. And most of the hoses are real easy to get to. And they're pretty much the same size, do the same kind of work. A few of them are different. For instance, this red one here, I suspect is red because it's an intake hose. And that means the water pump is pulling water through it, trying to collapse it. So when I replace that, I have to make sure that I get water intake hose. But the first challenge that I took was the exhaust hoses. And the exhaust hoses are 3-inch diameter exhaust, rubber reinforced with wire hoses. And what I found was, as I went through this, the hose bent down into the bottom of the boat here, and then went up underneath through this channel to the back of the boat, which I'll show you next. Now, one of the things that I discovered when I was working on this was that down here, where the hose met the deck, the bottom of the boat, it actually was connected to 3-inch copper waste disposal household copper pipe. Remember, this is 1976. This is before PVC. So it had a 3-inch copper pipe that ran from right where this carpet is back to the back of the boat, back there. So this is the back of the boat, and you can see the channel here where the tubing came out. So it's about 4 feet of tubing, of copper tubing, and then another section of rubber tubing to connect to the part that goes outside the boat, the exhaust pipe. I don't know why they did that, but the consequences were two. One is that the tubing had to be protected against rattling, so they wrapped carpet around it in 2 places, one in each end. And the carpet, once it got wet, stayed wet pretty much under there. And once it was wet, it also prevented moisture from coming through that channel to get to the bilge pump or the part of the boat where there's a drain plug. So water wasn't flowing correctly out of the back of the boat to a point where it could get off the boat. There's a gas tank that I showed you before that goes across the back here. It's a 20-gallon gas tank. Fortunately, it was really easy to remove. And the gas filler is over on that side. And somewhere along the way, the gas filler tube had a leak. And they repaired that with duct tape. So on that side, the duct tape was not effective, and the crud that was accumulating into the carpet that wrapped the tubes was very much like tar. It was awful stuff. So my choices seemed to be to pull up the floor to get to the tubing and get it out of the boat, which was an undesirable activity. And initially I thought it was bronze, so I was reluctant to cut it, but I quickly found out it was just copper. It was just copper waste water tubing. So I ended up cutting it out in pieces and pulling it out. So now I'm going to replace this end to end from there directly to the exhaust headers in the motor with proper exhaust 3-inch tubing. And then I can put the gas tank back in, connect up all those tubes, because you've got an overflow tube and you've got a vent and you've got the gas line that runs from back there and so forth. I'm going to test out these. You can see them. They're bilge vents that pull air through the boat and make sure that there's no gas fumes, which there probably was a lot of, considering that the tank was leaking at that connection over there. So I did all that. I got all that out of there. I got the tubing out, and I got the copper tubing out, and now I'm ready to run the new exhaust tubes. And then I'll put the tank, I'll replace the tubing that goes in and out of the tank, put the tank back in, and before that, check out the fans, the bilge fans, make sure that they're working correctly. So I may as well do that while the tank is out. Then put the tank back after I run the new tubing, and then I can concentrate on all the tubing that's under the cover here with the motor, and I don't expect to have much trouble doing that. Once all the rubber has been replaced, then I'll begin to work on the electrical. So I'm doing it in 2 stages. I think I'll try to start the motor before I attempt to upgrade all the electrical, just to make sure it runs as is, or if it doesn't run as is, then I'll know that it's not something that I've done to cause it not to work, and I'll be able to figure it out pretty quickly why it's not working. I suspect the carburetor needs to be really cleaned and so forth. So that's progress, and I'll keep you up to date as to what's next. I'll show you some pictures when I put it back together, but it's getting there. So far I haven't found anything except for that duct tape repair that isn't just age-related stuff. So that's all good. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.